The courtroom was silent. You could almost hear the sound of people breathing. The air felt heavy, as if everyone inside was holding something inside their hearts. The sound of the ceiling fan turning was the only thing breaking the silence. Sunlight came through the high windows, landing in soft patches on the polished wooden floor. In the middle of the room sat a little boy. He couldn't have been more than 8 years old. His shoes barely touched the floor, and his legs swung slowly under the chair. He looked small in that big chair, almost swallowed by the space around him. He wore a clean white shirt that looked slightly too big, like someone had tried to dress him nicely for something important. Everyone's eyes were on him. The judge sitting up high, the lawyers standing at their tables, even the people sitting in the back rows. Some came out of curiosity, others because they knew the family, but no one spoke. They all waited for the little boy to speak. The boy looked nervous. His small hands were gripping each other tightly in his lap. You could see the fear in his eyes. Not the kind of fear you get from monsters or darkness, but the fear of not knowing what will happen next. The kind that makes your chest tight and your throat dry. At the front of the courtroom, his mother sat on one side. She had dark circles under her eyes, the kind that come from sleepless nights and too many tears. She kept looking at him, her fingers twisting a tissue over and over. On the other side sat his father, quiet, stiff, and serious. He looked straight ahead, trying not to show any emotion, but his jaw was tight and his eyes were red. This was not the kind of place any child should be in. But life doesn't always wait until you're ready. Sometimes it pulls you into moments you never asked for. The judge, a woman with gentle eyes and a calm voice, looked down at the boy. "Take your time," she said softly. "You don't have to rush." The boy nodded slowly. He didn't say anything yet. His lips pressed together tightly. He looked down at his small shoes, then back up at the judge. One of the lawyers, a man in a gray suit, cleared his throat and spoke. "Your Honor," he said, "the child is here to share his thoughts about where he wishes to stay. Both parents love him deeply, but we need to understand what he feels is best." The boy didn't really understand all those big words. Custody, petition, proceeding. They sounded strange and cold, like words from another world. All he knew was that his parents were no longer together, and that he had to choose where to live. But how do you choose between two people you love? He looked toward his mother. She tried to smile, but her lips trembled. Then he looked toward his father. His father looked down, avoiding his eyes. The boy's chest hurt. It wasn't supposed to be like this. He remembered when things used to be different, when they all lived in the same house. He remembered waking up to the smell of breakfast, his mother humming in the kitchen and his father reading the newspaper. Sometimes his dad would pick him up and place him on his shoulders, pretending he was flying. Those were happy mornings. But then, things started to change. He could remember the sound of arguments, not the words, just the voices. The way they got louder and sharper. He would sit in his room with his toys, trying to block out the noise, but it always found a way in. Sometimes the arguing would stop suddenly, and the silence after was worse. It made him feel like something had broken. And then one day his mother told him they were moving out for a while. She said it softly, trying not to cry, but her voice cracked anyway. She said everything would be okay. But when they left, he saw his father standing by the window watching them go. That image never left his mind. Now, sitting in that big, quiet courtroom, all of those memories came rushing back. The judge leaned forward a little. "Ethan," she said. "Though in the story we won't use names, let's just call him the boy. You don't have to be scared. We just want to hear what you want. No one here will be upset with you." He nodded again, but his voice wouldn't come out. His throat felt tight, like there was a knot in it. He wanted to speak, but how could he? He remembered the night before court. He was at his grandmother's house. She had hugged him and said, "Just tell the truth, my dear. The truth is never wrong." He had nodded then too, though he wasn't sure what the truth really was. Was it that he missed his father? Was it that he felt safer with his mother? Was it that he wanted both? The lawyer asked gently, "Would you like to tell us who you want to live with?" The boy's fingers twisted together again. He looked at his mother, then his father, then back to the judge. Everyone was waiting. The room was completely still. He opened his mouth, but the words got stuck. He tried again. His voice was small and shaky. "I don't know," the lawyer nodded kindly. "That's all right. Take your time. He tried to think of something to say, something that would make everything okay, but he couldn't, because nothing about this felt okay. He didn't want to make one of them sad. He didn't want to break anyone's heart. He thought of his dad teaching him to ride a bike, running beside him in the park. He thought of his mom staying up late when he had a fever, holding his hand until he fell asleep. How could he choose between that? The judge could see his struggle. "Would you like some water?" she asked softly. He nodded, and someone brought him a small cup. He took a tiny sip, but his hands were still trembling. In that moment, everyone in the courtroom saw not just a case, not just parents fighting, but a small child caught between love and pain. They saw innocence sitting in the middle of adult problems. The boy took a deep breath. His heart was pounding so loud it almost drowned out the silence. He looked up again, this time not at his parents, but straight at the judge. "I just want things to stop hurting," he said quietly. His voice cracked at the edges, but he didn't cry. "I just want everyone to be happy again." The judge blinked slowly. She didn't say anything for a moment. The lawyer looked down. His mother covered her face with her hands. It wasn't the answer they were expecting. It wasn't about who he wanted to live with. It was about what he truly wanted. Peace. That single sentence hung in the air. Simple, pure, and honest. The judge nodded gently. "Thank you for being honest," she said. "You are very brave." The boy looked down again, not sure what to do next. He didn't feel brave. He just felt tired. Tired of seeing his parents sad. Tired of pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. The judge told him he could step down for now. The boy got off the chair slowly. His small shoes tapped lightly on the floor as he walked back toward the benches. His mother reached out her hand, but he hesitated for a second, then took it. He sat quietly beside her, his eyes staring at the floor. The case would go on. The adults would keep talking. But for him, that small moment felt like the biggest thing he'd ever done. He had spoken from his heart. And though no one in the room said it out loud, every person there felt something shift. As if that little boy's voice had reminded them all what this was really about. Not papers or rules, not winning or losing, but love. Outside, through the window, the afternoon sun shone a little brighter. The boy looked up and saw a bird flying by, free and peaceful. He smiled just a little, maybe the first smile of the day, because deep down, he hoped that one day his family could be free like that too, together, even if not in the same place. And that hope, fragile as it was, stayed in his small heart as he sat quietly in the courtroom, waiting for the adults to remember what really mattered. The courtroom was still quiet when the boy finished speaking. Everyone sat frozen for a few seconds, as if no one knew what to do next. His words were small and soft, but they hit everyone deeply. You could see it in their faces. Even the lawyers, who were usually calm and professional, looked down at their papers to hide their emotions. The judge took a slow breath and gave a kind look to the boy. "Thank you," she said gently. "You can sit back down now." He nodded and returned to the bench where his mother sat. She reached out to hold his hand, and for the first time in a long while he didn't pull away. His small hand rested inside hers, warm and trembling, but inside his heart was heavy. He didn't really understand what would happen next. He only knew that the grown-ups would keep talking about him, about his life, while he just sat and waited. The lawyer from his father's side stood up again. His voice was calm but firm as he began to speak about what the father could offer: a stable job, a good home, and a school nearby. He talked about rules, schedules, and plans. It all sounded so neat, so organized, but it didn't sound like love. Then the lawyer from his mother's side spoke. She talked about how the boy's mother was the one who took care of him every day, who knew his favorite meals, who helped him with homework, who stayed up at night when he had a fever. Her voice shook a little when she said, "He needs his mother's warmth." The boy sat quietly, listening. Each word felt like a wave hitting him from both sides. One side said comfort, the other said security. He didn't know which one to pick. He didn't even want to pick. As he sat there, he looked around the courtroom again. The tall walls made the place feel like a different world. The people wore neat clothes and serious faces. Papers were stacked on tables. Everything looked clean and proper, but it didn't feel like home. He remembered what home used to feel like. It wasn't perfect, but it was full of life. There was laughter sometimes and noise and little moments that made him feel safe. like when he would come home from school and smell his mother's cooking, or when his father would lift him onto his shoulders at the park. Those were small things, but to him, they meant everything. Now, even when he visited his father, it felt different. His father's house was quiet. Too quiet. The boy could hear his own footsteps echo in the hallway. His father tried to smile and play with him, but the smiles felt tired. There was always something missing, that warmth that used to fill their home. Back in the courtroom, the judge looked at him again. "Would you like to tell us a bit more?" she asked gently. "You can tell us anything, what you like about staying with your mother or with your father. Whatever you feel." The boy looked down at his shoes again. His throat felt tight. He didn't know where to start. He remembered the last time he saw his parents together. It was his birthday. They both came, trying their best to act happy. They smiled for pictures and helped him cut the cake. But he could feel it, that invisible wall between them. They didn't look at each other much. When one spoke, the other went quiet. Even at that young age, he knew something was wrong. After everyone left, he sat on his bed and looked at the two gifts they gave him, one from his father, one from his mother. He liked both gifts, but he couldn't help noticing that the wrapping paper was the same color, blue. He wondered if they had both chosen it by accident, or if deep down they still thought alike about some things. He wanted to tell the judge all that, how he didn't want to live with just one person, how he wanted both, how he wanted to wake up and see them together again. But he also knew that wasn't possible. He took a deep breath. "I like being with my mom," he said slowly. "She takes care of me and makes my food and reads me stories. But," he stopped for a second and the room leaned in, "I also like when I'm with my dad. He helps me with my bike. He teaches me things. He tells me I'm strong." His voice cracked a little. "I don't want to choose one. I want both." The courtroom went quiet again. You could almost hear hearts breaking. The judge's eyes softened. The mother wiped her tears with the corner of her sleeve. The father looked down, his eyes glassy. It wasn't a loud moment. There was no shouting, no drama. Just a small voice filled with honesty, the kind only a child can have. The judge spoke kindly. "I understand. You've spoken very bravely. Thank you." The boy nodded again and looked down, his heart pounding. He didn't know if what he said would change anything. But at least he said it. At least the truth was out. As the hearing went on, the adults started talking again, about school locations, about custody agreements, about work schedules. The boy's mind began to drift. He wasn't thinking about those things. He was thinking about the way his parents used to look at each other when they laughed. He was thinking about how safe he used to feel when they tucked him in together. He missed that more than anything. After a while, the judge called for a short break. The courtroom slowly emptied for a few minutes. The boy stepped outside into the hallway with his mother. The air felt cooler there. He looked out a big window and saw people walking outside, some laughing, some holding hands, some in a hurry. Life was moving normally for everyone else. But for him, it felt like time had stopped. His mother bent down beside him. "You did so well," she whispered. "I'm proud of you." He didn't say anything. He just looked out the window. "Will everything be okay?" he asked quietly. She paused for a moment. "I hope so," she said softly. "We'll try," he nodded. He wanted to believe her. When they went back into the courtroom, his father was standing near the table talking to his lawyer. When he saw the boy walk in, he smiled gently. It was a small smile, but it reached his eyes. The boy smiled back a little. That small moment and that small exchange, Connie said, more than any lawyer could. There was still love there. It might have been buried under hurt and confusion, but it was still there. As the judge returned, the sound of the gavel brought everyone's attention back. The hearing continued, but the tone of the room had changed. People were softer, slower to argue. Maybe it was because of what the boy had said. Maybe everyone realized they were fighting over something that wasn't a thing. It was a person. A little boy who just wanted peace. The judge looked at the parents and said, "Sometimes we adults forget that children see everything. They feel everything. This little boy has reminded us what truly matters." The mother lowered her head, tears running down her cheeks. The father closed his eyes and took a deep breath. For the first time, they weren't just thinking about who was right. They were thinking about how their son must have felt through all this. The boy sat still, his legs swinging again under the bench. He didn't understand every word, but he felt something in the room change. The voices were calmer. The air didn't feel so heavy anymore. When the hearing ended for the day, the judge told them they would continue later after reviewing everything. Everyone stood up and began to leave slowly. The boy followed his mother toward the exit. Before they left, his father came over. He knelt down so he was at the boy's height. "You were very brave today," he said quietly. The boy looked at him for a long moment. "I just told the truth," he whispered. His father smiled faintly. "That's what brave people do." For the first time in months, his father and mother looked at each other. Not with anger, not with blame, but with tired, honest eyes. Neither said a word. But there was something unspoken in that look. Something that said, maybe we can try to do better. The boy noticed it too, and for the first time in a long time, he felt a tiny spark of hope. As they walked out of the courthouse, the sun was lower now, painting everything in warm light. The boy looked up at the sky and thought about what the judge said, that adults forget children see everything. He hoped his parents would remember that now. He didn't know what would happen next, but he felt a little lighter. Maybe things wouldn't be perfect, but maybe they could be peaceful. And in that quiet walk toward the car, with one parent on each side of him for the first time in months, the boy felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: safe. The next morning, the courthouse looked the same: tall gray walls, wide doors, and the same heavy air that seemed to hang over everyone. But something inside the boy felt different. Maybe it was because of what happened the day before, or maybe it was because he knew that this was the day everything would be decided. He sat quietly in the hallway with his mother before the hearing began. She was holding his backpack, running her hand over it again and again like she was trying to stay calm. The boy just stared at the floor, his legs swinging lightly. He wasn't sure how to feel: scared, nervous, or tired. Maybe all three. When his father arrived, there was a small pause. The air between them was thick, but not angry this time. The father gave a polite nod to the mother, and she nodded back. It was small, but it mattered. It meant maybe they were starting to listen to each other, even if just a little. The judge entered the courtroom, and everyone stood. The sound of chairs moving and shoes clicking filled the room for a moment. When everyone sat down again, the silence returned. The boy could feel his heart beating fast in his chest. He didn't understand everything that was being said. All those big words the lawyers used still confused him, but he could feel the weight of what was happening. He could tell this day mattered. The judge began by looking at the papers in front of her, then at both parents. "I want to thank everyone for being respectful yesterday," she said softly. "But before I make any decisions, I would like to hear from the child one more time." The boy's stomach turned. He hadn't expected that. He thought he was done talking. But now all eyes turned to him again. The judge smiled gently. "You don't have to be afraid," she said. "You can speak from your heart. We're just here to listen." He stood slowly. His knees felt weak, but he made his way to the front again. When he sat in the big chair, he took a deep breath and looked around. The same faces were there. His mother on one side, his father on the other, both watching him with soft, worried eyes. He wanted to be brave. Not just for himself, but for them. The lawyer asked quietly, "Do you remember what we talked about yesterday?" He nodded. "Today, if you'd like, you can tell us anything you didn't say before." "Anything you feel." The boy hesitated. He looked at his hands, small and folded on the table. For a few seconds, the room was completely silent. Then, very quietly, he said, "I don't want to choose." The judge leaned forward, her expression gentle. "I understand," she said. "But can you tell us why?" The boy swallowed hard. His voice was shaky, but he began to speak anyway. "Because I love both of them," he said. "And when I have to choose one, it feels like I'm hurting the other. I don't want anyone to be sad because of me." His words were simple, but they filled the room like a wave. You could see people shifting in their seats, some wiping their eyes. He kept going, his voice getting a little stronger. "When I'm with my mom, I miss my dad. When I'm with my dad, I miss my mom. I just want things to be like they used to be. When we were all together, when nobody was angry." His mother covered her mouth with her hand, trying not to cry. His father looked down at his lap, his fingers clenched together. The boy's eyes started to water, but he blinked quickly and continued. "I know you can't make them live together again. I know that. But I just want them to stop fighting. I Want them to talk to each other without shouting. I want to go to sleep at night without worrying about who I'll stay with next week." His voice trembled, but his words were steady. The judge listened quietly, nodding slowly. There was kindness in her eyes, but also sadness, the kind adults feel when they realize how much children understand, even when they shouldn't have to. The boy looked up again, this time straight at his parents. "I just want us to be okay," he said softly. "That's all." For a few seconds, the room was completely silent. Even the sound of the fan above seemed to fade away. The mother's tears finally fell. The father pressed his lips together tightly, his eyes glistening. Everyone in that courtroom, lawyers, clerks, even strangers, felt the weight of those words. The judge took a slow breath before speaking. "You've been very honest and very brave," she said. "You've reminded us all what this is really about." The boy didn't say anything else. He just sat there, small but strong, his heart pounding. He wasn't trying to make anyone cry or change the world. He just wanted peace. After a moment, the judge looked at both parents. "You've both heard your son," she said softly. "This isn't about who wins or loses. It's about what he needs. And what he needs right now isn't a battle. It's peace, stability, and love from both of you." The mother nodded, wiping her face. The father nodded too, though his eyes stayed on his son. The judge said she would take some time to make a decision, but that she wanted both parents to consider a shared plan, something that let the boy stay close to both of them. She encouraged them to find a way to talk, to work together, to put him first. When the session ended, the boy sat quietly for a moment, his heart still racing. Then he stood up and looked around the room one last time. It didn't feel as big or scary anymore, maybe because he wasn't as scared as before. He walked toward his parents. They were standing near the benches, both looking lost in thought. When they saw him, they both knelt down almost at the same time. His mother took his hand. "You were so brave," she whispered. His father nodded. "You spoke from your heart. I'm proud of you." The boy looked at both of them. "Can we go home now?" he asked softly. They both looked at each other. For the first time in what felt like forever, they shared a small smile. It was tired and uncertain, but it was real. "Let's go," his mother said. As they walked out of the courtroom, the boy felt the warmth of both their hands, one on each side. The feeling was strange but comforting. He didn't know what the judge would decide later, but at that moment he didn't care. They were together, even just for a few steps. That was enough for now. Outside, the sky was bright and the air smelled like rain. The boy tilted his head up and felt a few drops land on his face. He smiled a little. His parents walked quietly beside him, not saying much. But their silence wasn't the same as before. It wasn't angry. It was thoughtful, calm, maybe even hopeful. When they reached the car, his father opened the door for him and his mother helped him with his seatbelt. They both moved gently, as if they were remembering what it felt like to do things together. As the car started, the boy looked out the window and saw the courthouse fading behind them. He didn't hate that place anymore. It was scary, yes, but it was also where he finally said what was in his heart. He didn't know what would happen next. But deep down, he felt lighter. Maybe, just maybe, things could start getting better. That night, he lay in bed thinking about everything. He thought about the judge's kind eyes, his parents' faces, and the way everyone had listened to him. He didn't know if adults always listened to children, but today they did, and as he drifted off to sleep, he whispered a small hope into the darkness. "Please let tomorrow be a little happier than today." The day after the court hearing, the boy woke up early. The sun was shining through the small gap in the curtains, lighting up the room softly. For a moment he lay there quietly, listening to the birds outside. It was peaceful. No loud voices, no arguing, just calm. He sat up and looked around the room. He was staying at his grandmother's house again. The smell of toast drifted in from the kitchen. He could hear her humming a soft tune, the same one she always sang when she cooked. It made him feel safe. But even in that calm, his mind kept going back to what happened in court the day before. He could still see the judge's face, his parents' eyes filled with tears, and how quiet the room became after he spoke. He didn't really know what would happen next, but something told him that things might start to change. His grandmother came into the room, smiling gently. "Good morning, dear," she said. Did you sleep well? He nodded. Yes. She brushed his hair back with her hand. You were very brave yesterday, she said softly. I'm proud of you. He looked down shyly. I just told the truth, he whispered. I know, she said with a kind smile. And sometimes the truth is what helps people find their way again. He wasn't sure what she meant, but her words felt comforting. Later that morning, there was a knock on the door. When his grandmother opened it, his mother was standing there holding a small bag and wearing a tired smile. Behind her, just a few steps away, was his father. The boy's eyes widened a little. It had been a long time since he had seen them arrive together. Not fighting, not arguing, just standing there quietly. His grandmother smiled warmly at both of them. Come in, she said gently. He's been waiting for you. They walked inside a little awkwardly at first. His mother sat on the sofa, while his father stood near the window, hands in his pockets. You could feel that strange tension between them. Not anger this time, but something softer, something like sadness mixed with hope. The boy ran over and hugged his mother first. She wrapped her arms around him tightly, kissing the top of his head. I missed you, she whispered. Then he turned to his father, who knelt down and opened his arms. The boy hugged him too. His father held him close for a moment, saying quietly, I'm so proud of you. For a while, no one spoke. They just sat together, the three of them in the same room for the first time in a long time. Finally, his mother broke the silence. We wanted to talk, she said softly. Together, his father nodded. We think it's time to stop fighting, he added. We both love you and we want to make things better. The boy's eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't from sadness. They were from relief. Really? He asked. Really, his mother said, her voice trembling slightly. We're going to try to talk to each other more. Without getting angry, his father smiled gently. We're going to figure out how to be better parents. Together. Even if we live in different homes, the boy's heart felt warm. It wasn't everything he wanted, they weren't getting back together. But it was something. It was hope. His grandmother smiled quietly from the kitchen, watching the scene. She didn't interrupt. She just let them talk. They spent the rest of the morning together. His parents helped him with his homework, made him laugh with silly jokes, and even shared breakfast at the same table. For a few hours, it almost felt like old times. The boy kept sneaking glances at them, noticing small things. The way his mother still knew how his father liked his coffee. The way his father remembered that she always added extra sugar to her tea. It was like they were remembering little pieces of their old life, the parts that had been buried under anger and pride. When it was time to leave, his father looked at his mother. Would it be okay if I dropped him off at school tomorrow? His mother hesitated for a second, then nodded. That would be fine. The boy smiled so wide his cheeks hurt. For the first time in months, his parents were agreeing, not arguing. That night, after everyone had left, his grandmother tucked him into bed. Do you see? She whispered. Your words reached their hearts, he smiled sleepily. I hope they don't forget, he said softly. She brushed his hair back again. They won't, she promised. Sometimes it takes a child's heart to remind grown-ups what love looks like. The next day, when his father came to pick him up for school, the boy noticed something different. His father was early, and instead of honking the car horn, he came to the door and greeted his mother politely. She smiled back. It was small, but it meant everything. The drive to school was quiet but peaceful. His father asked about his favorite subjects and his friends, and the boy laughed as he told funny stories about his classmates. When they reached the school gate, his father looked at him. You know, he said, I talked to your mom last night. We're going to try to make a schedule that works for all of us. No more fighting, the boy nodded. That's good. His father smiled. It's because of you. You made us see what's important. The boy blushed and looked down. I just didn't want anyone to be sad. His father reached over and ruffled his hair. And that's what makes you special. As the boy walked into the schoolyard, he turned around and waved. His father waved back, his smile soft but full of pride. Over the next few weeks, things really did start to change. His parents met with a counselor, not because the court told them to, but because they wanted to. They learned how to talk again, how to listen without interrupting, how to forgive without bringing up old wounds. At first, it was awkward. There were long pauses, quiet tears, and uncomfortable moments. But slowly, things began to heal. The boy noticed it too. When his father came to pick him up from his mother's house, they would talk politely at the door. Sometimes they even laughed. The boy loved hearing that sound, the sound of laughter returning to his life. One afternoon after school, he saw them standing outside together. They were talking about his report card. His father said he's doing great, and his mother smiled proudly. For a moment, they both looked at him at the same time, and he saw it, the love they both had for him. The one thing they still shared completely. That night, the boy lay in bed thinking about everything that had happened. It wasn't perfect. They still lived in different homes, but the world felt lighter. The shouting had stopped. The sadness was fading. And even though he didn't say it out loud, he knew that what happened in that courtroom wasn't just about him speaking up. It was about helping everyone remember what family really means. Sometimes, it's not about being together in the same house. It's about being together in heart. His parents still had days when things weren't easy, but now they tried. They called each other to plan things for him. They both came to his school play, sitting on opposite sides at first, but smiling at the same time when he spoke his lines on stage. He could see them looking at each other, not with anger, but with something else, respect. And as he stood there, wearing his little costume, he smiled wider than ever, because for the first time in a long time, both of his parents were there, clapping for him together. In that moment, he knew his words in court had truly changed something. Maybe not everything, but enough to make life brighter again. That night, as he sat by the window looking up at the stars, he whispered to himself, "It's getting better." He didn't need anything fancy. Not a big house. Not gifts, not promises. Just peace, just love. And now, little by little, he had both. Sometimes it only takes a small, honest heart to remind grown-ups that love doesn't end. It just needs to be remembered. And that's what the boy had done. With courage, with kindness, and with words that came straight from his heart. A few weeks passed after the hearing. The days were quieter now. The loud arguments, the court papers, the constant worry, all of it seemed to fade a little each day. The boy could feel it. Life was beginning to feel lighter. One bright morning, the family was called back to the courthouse for the final decision. The boy woke up early that day, feeling nervous but calm. He put on the same white shirt he had worn the first day in court, the one that was a bit too big for him. His grandmother helped him button it up, smiling softly. "You look handsome," she said. "And brave, as always," he smiled back. "Do you think it'll be okay?" She placed her hand gently on his cheek. "I think it already is." When they arrived at the courthouse, it didn't feel as cold and scary as before. The boy looked around the hallway where, the same gray walls, the same quiet, but now it felt different. Maybe it was because he wasn't carrying fear anymore. His mother and father stood together this time. Not side by side, but close enough that it didn't look like a wall stood between them. They spoke quietly while waiting, and every now and then one of them smiled. The boy watched them, feeling proud, even if they didn't realize it. When it was time to go inside, the judge looked at the three of them with kind eyes. "Good morning," she said gently. "I'm happy to see you all here." The boy sat between his parents. He could feel their warmth on both sides, and it gave him strength. The judge looked at her papers and then at the parents. "I've read everything carefully," she said. "But more than anything, I've listened to your son. His words showed more truth than any document or argument could." The boy looked down, feeling shy, but the judge smiled at him. "You reminded us that a child's heart only asks for peace, love, and family, not perfection." She continued, "So I've decided on shared custody. That means both of you will continue to raise him together, with respect and understanding. He will spend time with both parents equally." The boy's mother nodded slowly, tears in her eyes. His father also nodded, his shoulders relaxing for the first time in a long while. The judge smiled softly. "I hope this decision is not just a legal one, but a promise to keep the peace that your son's courage has given you." For a moment, no one spoke. The courtroom was quiet again, but this time it wasn't a heavy silence. It was peaceful, the kind that comes after a storm finally ends. The boy let out a small breath. He didn't understand every word the judge said, but he understood enough. It meant he could see both his parents. It meant he didn't have to choose anymore. After the hearing ended, the three of them walked out together. The boy held both their hands, one on each side. As they stepped outside, sunlight spilled across the steps of the courthouse. The air was warm and the sky was bright blue. They stood there for a moment, looking at each other. His mother smiled softly. "It's over," she said quietly. His father nodded. "No," he said gently. "It's a new start." The boy looked up at them, a small smile forming on his face. He didn't say anything, but his eyes said everything. "Thank you." That day, they all went to a small park nearby. It wasn't planned. They just wanted to be somewhere quiet, somewhere open. The park had tall trees and a small pond with ducks swimming slowly. The boy ran ahead, laughing for the first time in what felt like forever. His parents watched him from a bench. For a while, they didn't talk. They just watched their son, the boy who had reminded them what love meant. Finally, his father spoke. "You know, I never realized how much he understood. He's stronger than both of us." His mother nodded. "He had to be. We forgot how much he was hurting." His father sighed. "I just hope we can do better now." She looked at him and said softly, "We will." When the boy came running back, out of breath and smiling, they both laughed. And in that laugh there was healing. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Life began to find its rhythm again. The boy started spending some days at his mother's house and some at his father's. He had 2 rooms now, one painted light blue, one green, but both filled with his toys, books, and the same photo of his family. His parents kept their promise. They talked calmly, planned together, and even celebrated small things together. When the boy had a school play, they both came, sitting just a few seats apart. When he had a football game, they both cheered from the sidelines. At first, people at the school whispered, wondering if it was awkward for them. But it wasn't, not anymore, because they weren't there for each other. They were there for him. The boy noticed how much easier life felt. No more choosing sides. No more quiet tears before bed. He started to smile more, laugh louder, and sleep peacefully. One evening, he was sitting with his father, drawing pictures at the kitchen table. His father looked at him and said, "You know, you changed everything." The boy looked up, confused. "Me?" His father nodded. "Yes. When you spoke in court, you made everyone remember what really matters. You made us see what we were doing wrong." The boy smiled shyly. "I just said what I felt." His father chuckled softly. "Sometimes that's all it takes." Later that week, when he was at his mother's house, she told him something similar. "Do you know why I smile more now?" she asked while tucking him into bed. "Why?" he asked. "Because you reminded me that being kind is more important than being right," she said. "Your words made us both think." The boy grinned, his eyes sleepy. "I'm glad," she kissed his forehead. "Good night, my brave boy." He closed his eyes with a smile. Months later, on a warm spring afternoon, they all gathered at the same park again. His parents, his grandmother, and him. They brought sandwiches, juice, and a kite. The boy ran across the grass, holding the kite string, his laughter echoing in the air. His parents sat side by side on a blanket, watching. His grandmother smiled at them both. "You've come a long way," she said. His father nodded. "He showed us the way." His mother looked at the boy and said softly, "He just wanted us to be happy." The wind picked up, lifting the kite higher and higher. The boy shouted happily, "Look, it's flying so high." His parents stood up and joined him, holding the string together for a moment. Their hands brushed lightly and they both smiled. It wasn't awkward. It was peaceful. As the kite danced in the sky, the boy looked up and said quietly, "It feels good, doesn't it?" His mother asked, "What does?" He smiled. "When everything's calm again." They both nodded. They understood. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The boy sat between his parents on the grass, resting his head on his mother's shoulder, while his father placed an arm around them both. They didn't need to say anything. The silence spoke for them. It said, "We're okay now." And that's how life slowly healed. Not through big words or sudden changes, but through small, gentle steps. The boy's truth had done something no court could ever order. It had touched hearts. It had turned pain into understanding, anger into forgiveness, and distance into closeness. He didn't think of himself as a hero, but in his small, quiet way, he had become one, not by fighting, but by speaking from the heart. Years later, when he would look back, he would remember that courtroom not as a place of fear, but as the place where everything began to heal. He would remember the silence that followed his words, the tears that turned into smiles, and the way love found its way back into his family's life. And maybe, just maybe, he'd remember the lesson he taught without even meaning to, that sometimes the smallest voice can make the biggest change.